Connor MacLeod is the author of the Hebridean Baker, At Home, Flavours and Folktales from the Scottish Islands, from Source Books. He has, this is, right?
It is.
Source Books?
That's right.
Are they enjoying your kilt?
I hope so.
I came this close to wearing mine. So glad I didn't. I wouldn't want to clash. Recipes as well as stories, as the title might lead you to think. Music is a big part of the culture. Connor himself is a singer as well as a baker. Is his third or fourth book now?
It's my third book, yeah.
Worldwide bestseller. We're very happy to have him here. And what I really enjoy about him is he is motivating his worldwide followers to bake, forage, learn Gaelic, enjoy a dram or two of whiskey, and seek a more wholesome and simple life. Connor MacLeod, y'all. All righty, the Hebridean Islands, which I'm butchering away, way up there. It was part of Norway back in the day. And when we say back in the day, we're talking like 1200s, right?
Yeah, so the Vikings came over in the 8th century, and it's wonderful. For most people, the Outer Hebrides are far, far north, but for the Vikings, they call it Sudrier, the far south islands. And it still really resonates today, the Viking culture on the islands. And you spoke about the language of Gaelic, which comes from Gaelic, the Irish language, but it's about 50% of it is Gaelic, 50% of it is Old West Norse. So we're quite hard to understand, even when I speak English.
Hey man, I got you covered on the hard to understand thing. Don't even worry. The seasons there, the sunshine or lack of, the winter, tell us about your seasons.
Yeah, so, we're so lucky in the summertime, we really do have nearly 24 hours a day of daylight. But unfortunately, with all that goodness, there is a lot of darkness in the winter, and really we only get about 3 hours of daylight in the winter time. But we still celebrate it, where you'd be surprised to hear that we like to have a few celebrations even in the winter time in Scotland. I think my particular favourite, we celebrate the winter solstice. Our Christmas starts on the 21st of December, and we keep drinking till Hogmanay on the 31st of December. But there is the 21st we call the Eiche and the Shack Superin. They say that there's so much darkness for that 21 hours that you've got time to eat dinner 7 times before the sun rises again, and we certainly do.
I think we do both those things in Mississippi. Eat 7 dinners and drink for the rest of December. But I noticed there's some great seafood in this book, even though you are a baker, and there's a lot of desserts, obviously, but the lobster, the fresh lobster that y'all eat up there, I'm thinking, how do you ever go out to a restaurant anymore?
It's very true, actually. It's hard when you've got such great produce, be it our lamb, our lobster. I mean, I'm kind of going to wave and see who's been to Scotland and make all these radio folk jealous if they haven't been. But it's amazing to see. Do you know what? It's amazing to see that the culture and food and traditions of Scotland still resonate so much over in the US, and that there's a power, we call it Cianalus in Gaelic, there's power to draw people back to Scotland. And I think the food side of things it's getting back in fashion again. I said our fresh food, our traditional recipes, which is a huge part of my book, is finding those old recipes from those old dusty cookbooks I found from the 18th and 19th century and bringing them back and giving them a wee bit of a modern twist again.
You're a self-described cookbook nerd.
I am a cookbook nerd.
So you collect them from all over?
I certainly do, and there's some fantastic old Scottish cookbooks, and again, what I try and do is find the most interesting, and the ones with the stories as well, like a Bride's Bond, which is a Shetland shortbread, which a mother of the bride will smash over her daughter's head on her wedding day. Scots flummery, which was the last thing that Flora MacDonald had before she went to jail for helping Bonnie Prince Charlie escape from Culloden. These amazing stories, but through food. Is there not a better way to do it?
You, in the book, you mentioned that you planted 6 apple trees And I wanted to ask you about the progress, about the trees. How are the trees going?
The deer love them. I feel like that might resonate over here a wee bit as well. So yes, the deer are delighted with our new orchard.
None of them have made it?
I haven't got there fast enough to get an apple yet.
Wow.
They beat me to it.
So that's a universal problem. Now, I was asking you earlier about wild game, and obviously there's not going to be a lot of deer or venison recipes in this particular book, but we're very big on wild game here. We eat a lot of deer. Is it big over in Scotland?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for us, we very much try and use our produce and every single bit of it, every bit of the fish, every bit of the sheep, every bit of the deer. That's very important to us to use those things wisely and use them in the way that traditionally we would.
Now let's talk about some of the sweets, because this is, again, you're a baker. This is a book of baking. Half these or a good portion of these recipes are made with whiskey. The rest of them are just incredibly rich. And in the wintertime, I'm just thinking you got, 3 hours of sunshine. Why don't you weigh 350 pounds? That's what I'm trying to get
This is
at.
a good corset I am. You know what? I've got the sweetest tooth in the world, and I hope a few folk out there enjoy a wee treat every so often as well. And be it a classic, I love to put a twist on a classic and put a Scottish flavour on that classic dish. And I really, I always think you kind of take my cookbook out when your aunt or your sister's coming round to visit, and you want like this kind of hearty, kind of cozy cake for an afternoon gossip. That's what my cookbook's all about.
Afternoon gossip, yeah, we can speak that language. We mentioned music, and music is certainly very big in the Mississippi and in the Southern culture. Also huge in Scotland.
Very much so.
And you yourself are a musician,
a
singer. You actually have an album out?
Yeah. Well, just a single so far. We released the Gaelic rendition of All Lang Syne, which had never been done before. It went out just before Christmas there. Our band's the Hogmanay Boys, which did pretty well. It was amazing to hear yourself on the radio.
Yeah.
Which I hope people will tonight.
I don't know if it's amazing or not. Would you mind singing for us a second?
Well, there's a great tradition of Gaelic singing called Push the Bial, which is mouth music. And they're usually created through the strathspeys and the reels when we couldn't afford to have instruments. And often they add gossip from the different villages and tongue twisters. The one I'll sing very quickly is called Ní na Cailliche Crothaigh Crúbig, which is the daughter of the hunchback old lady who lives over the hill. And I know many of you will know it, so please sing along. And this one, so it goes like this. So. O ní na Cailliche Crothaigh Crúbig, Thiontaigh Cool, Srochighiram, Vrepighi Castle Marshachar and Nol, at Thiontaigh Cool, Srochighiram, ní na Cailliche Crothaigh Crúbig, Thiontaigh Cool, Srochighiram, Vrepighi Castle Marshachar and Nol, at Thiontaigh Cool, Srochighiram, Thiontaigh Cool, of Thiontaigh Cool, of Thiontaigh Cool, the Srochighiram, Thiontaigh Cool, of Thiontaigh Cool, of Thiontaigh Cool, the Srochighiram, Thiontaigh Cool, of Vrepigan Tool, at Thiontaigh Cool, the Srochighiram, o ní na Cailliche Crothaigh Crúbig, Thiontaigh Cool, Srochighiram, up! I'm going to tell the quickest story in the world, but my father was a fisherman in the North Atlantic, and at the weekend he'd come home and he'd have a wee rowing boat, and one day he was coming back, he had lobster pots and everything, and he's rowing back, and lo and behold, he smashed into a boat. Not only did he smash into a boat, he smashed into the Royal Yacht Britannia. And who was leaning over the side but the Queen and Princess Margaret? And the Queen leans over the side and says to my father, where have you been? That's my Queen accent, by the way. Where have you been? And my father looks up and says, I've been to the lobsters. Where have you been? And the Queen says, she said, we're on our holidays. We're off to Balmoral. But we're broken down. And my father says, that's terrible. Have you got anything in for dinner? And the Queen said no. Now, I'd be very surprised if the Queen left Buckingham Palace with nothing in for dinner. But according to my father, there was nothing. So he gifted them lobsters and crabs and waved them goodbye. And as my father could only do, he kind of stopped at the other 29 houses on the way home and had a whiskey before he got back to Irish telling the story. But lo and behold, 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. And it had my father's name, Donald John Macleod, from the village of Cremore, Isle of Lewis. And in the top right-hand corner, there was a stamp from Balmoral. And it said, "Dear Mr. Macleod, firstly, will you apologise to the village if we caused any problems when we broke down a couple of weeks ago? We feasted on your lobsters and crabs that night, and it was the best meal we had on our trip to Balmont. See you next year, Queenie." No, Lizzie. I can't remember how she signed her name, but let's say Lizzie. And we all stood round going, he actually told the truth. He had actually met the Queen. And I do remember he was quite proudly kind of folding the letter into his top pocket. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I might be one of the only folk in the world that can honestly say that my father gave the Queen crabs. And she said thank you as well. So I think if that doesn't sum up life in the Hebrides, I don't know what does. But my mother and father really influenced me in what I do. My mother was a Haddis tweed weaver, my father a fisherman. And even though maybe I didn't take up those industries, they are very much at my heart. And I know in this area as well that family traditions, family stories, family recipes are very, very important, and that's everything that's important to me. I never wanted these stories to get lost, and it's so easy to happen. So the book is filled with traditional stories and those recipes that I know you would absolutely love.
Connor Macleod, y'all. The Hebridean Baker, at home, flavors and folktales from the Scottish Islands. And of course, Connor will join us after the show, sign copies, maybe sing a little more. Man, great stuff, great recipes, and again, a lot of sweet dishes, a lot of desserts, baked goods, as you might imagine in this book. You will want to go out and prepare some of these dishes. And then, I don't know, get everybody a treadmill for Christmas, I guess. Because, boy, there's some rich stuff. Hey, speaking of rich stuff, let's get another tune from our favorite live radio band in this land. It is Effie Burt with the Yalobushwhackers.